Welcome back to Akamai TV. I'm Nelson Rodriguez. Throughout the entire show, I've been consuming most of my video content on my mobile phone, including watching Akamai TV clips. And for some markets in the world, that is the primary way that all video content is consumed. But what's interesting about that is as the audience grows for consuming video on mobile devices, we start to face the fact that the mobile networks weren't necessarily designed for that. And in some cases, we're talking about millions and millions of viewers concurrently watching the same content. And luckily for me, Ritesh, who's on the Akamai team, is here to talk a little bit about his experience with helping companies deliver that. Ritesh, I know you've worked on some really big live events, and in particular, I'm thinking about an event that happened last year where there were something like 10 million viewers watching concurrently, mostly on mobile devices. What is that like? I mean, what's the experience of trying to deliver that kind of content in an environment that wasn't necessarily designed for it?
Well, if you think about it, you double-click into that 10 million number, and what you get is the Android fragmentation in client devices at its very best. You add to that living room devices, iOS, web, and also a feature phone with a screen size that is only as large as 2.4 inches. You add 11 languages. You add connection types that vary from 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE, wired connections. And last but not the least, you're talking about an audience who has only ever consumed this content live in a stadium. So the expectation in terms of quality of experience is similar to that, or they want quality of experience similar to that of somebody who is in the stadium. So that is what you get when you double click into the 10 million number.
Yeah, so you're talking about an audience that's comparing this to an experience that was live.
Yeah,
right?
because what happened back in the region is that these folks directly jumped from consuming the content in real time to actually consuming it on a cell phone or a cellular network. So there was no transition that happened, right, from wired networks to a desktop to a mobile device. It was directly on a mobile device on a cellular network.
Yeah, so a lot of the emerging markets and markets like India are mobile-first markets, where, as you're describing, some of the consumers of this content they're viewing the content on mobile devices as pretty much their only way of consuming it. And we've seen a big explosion in the number of people consuming OTT content on mobile devices. How did that explosion happen? Like, describe that experience for me on the ground.
Yeah, so I mean, it all started off with a new operator who offered like rock bottom prices on data plans. So you had everyone jumping onto the bandwagon of consuming content over the cellular network. What that did is essentially brought to light a different varieties of content that had to be consumed over the cellular network. It ranged from not just live content but general entertainment content, because all of the episodial content that was available on satellite and cable was now available on OTT. And last but not the least, you had a huge influx of user-generated content. So all of that led to this explosion, and one of the side effects was that you had other operators who were obviously competing with this new operator for retaining their subscribers, and they also started offering rock bottom prices. So you had the existing user base also start increasing their consumption of content online. One of the side effects of that was people finding more and more avenues to connect. And that's how you saw the growth of Wi-Fi spots in train stations. To give you a recent stat, Google, I think, recently installed Wi-Fi spots in up to 400 Indian train stations, and they are reaching about 8 million audiences on a monthly basis in every station. So that's how we got there.
I know I saw photos when we helped to deliver a really large cricket match in India. There were folks sitting in railway stations watching the matches live.
The local breakout model in railway stations for to easily consume that content without connecting to a cell tower was a huge value add.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the Indian infrastructure before this rise of OTT consumption on mobile devices. How prepared was India for that kind of consumption pattern?
Well, that's the tricky part, right? The newer operators who came in and offered these prices and gained the subscriber base were planning their networks pretty well. They had what we call packet gateways in each one of the 22 circles. They had a network that was built up IPv6. So that was good. But then some of the existing operators, I should say, started finding very optimistic ways of optimizing their own architectures. So they started using limited packet gateways and funneling traffic from 22 circles through these limited packet gateways. So it was not, I would say, a very smooth transition, but slowly we are getting there.
I want to understand a little bit about your job, right? So your job is for companies to come to you and say, we want to do something that has never been done before. We want to reach 10 million people at the same time consuming live content on their phones. Ritesh, go make it happen. Describe that experience for me.
Well, it starts from kind of basically understanding the entire user journey. So when we sit down with a customer, we don't just ask him, what are the streams that you're going to serve? We ask him, how is the user going to get onto the app to get onto the stream? And then we start optimizing the entire app experience to say, hey, if the audience size starts rising, what is the level of personalization that you want? How much can that be compromised for the newer audiences that you want to support? How do you want to plan your API strategies? Let's plan a strategy that's focused on just performance versus a combination of performance and security. Let's think about how you're encoding your content. Let's think about the pipelines that have to be optimized in the encoding layer, right? Let's go through multiple iterations of what it takes for content to be perceptually good on a mobile device, and let's not think about just higher bit rates. So these are all the things that go into planning this event, and I can tell you that it's not just one event, as I said, right? It's planning for the entire shift in consumption that's happening across different types of content.
Yeah, so there was, can you talk a little bit about a big event that happened last year? Can you share any details about some of the stuff that we did last year for delivering live content to mobile devices?
Yeah, I mean, of course, without taking any names, the event was pretty huge. Just to give you some numbers, as I said, right, more than 90% of the audience from cellular networks, 95% of the audience from Android platforms, and we had to plan for redundancies at every touch point with the delivery pipeline. The customer came to us and said he wants to monetize all of these audiences that he's seeing. So we had to kind of sit down and figure out what is the right monetization strategy. Is it going to be a unique per user, or can we start defining user bases, and can we have a fallback to have in-stream ads as well? Can we think of how much redundancy we can establish at the origin when the content is being ingested? Can we think of what is going to be the fallback in our own architecture, right? Today we have all of these MSL workflows that have just one single pipeline. Can we replicate it into 3 times so that we are defining our own architectures in different operators and are not subjected to localized failures? So yeah, that's the planning. That's redundancy planning.
When a match went live, did you sit and watch it on a phone? How did you?
No, I was on. I was on the floor,
you were on the floor,
working with the customer, and it's just amazing to see how all of the systems slowly, but kind of in a steady way, start to collapse and then start to stabilize. Yeah. So that was a great experience.
Yeah. What do you expect to see as we go forward? Obviously, there was a recent explosion in mobile device usage. What do you think is going to happen over the next couple of years? Are we going to be seeing 30 million concurrent viewers? What do you think?
That's an interesting question, and that's the question that we are trying to answer with the customer. Because if you think about it, you're looking at tier 2 and tier 3 regions that have not even been explored. So you can't put a number to those regions and say that, okay, it's going to be exponential or it's going to be a multiple or what have you. So the exercise that we are doing right now is not just looking at top 10 or top 20 states and trying to optimize for them, but we are looking at all of the states. And we are trying to figure out what it takes to bring the bottom state right up to the top level. And then we can start to put a number on the untapped audience and unlock that audience for more monetization.
So you're talking about making sure that the experience is consistent across the current user base.
Current user base, and more importantly, the untapped user base. We don't really know if that exists, or to what extent does it exist?
Yeah, that's an exciting problem to try to solve. I think that's cool work that you're doing, and I appreciate that you were here to share your experience with me and with the audience.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ritesh.
It's great to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Nelson.
you so much for watching Akamai TV. We hope we'll see you again soon.